Native Wellness Institute. All right. Hello, everybody. I know we're just now getting connected here, so we'll give it a few minutes, but welcome in. It's been a while since I have been on a power hour, and it's been, I think actually the last time I was on a power hour was with YouTube. So I'm glad to be back. Let me just do this really quick and you might hear us. There we go. Okay, hello everybody. My name is Shalene Joseph. I am a Ani from Fort Belknap, Montana on my mom's side. And on my late father's side, I'm Khoikhon Athabaskan from Tanana, Alaska. Currently in Chinook territory, just outside of Portland. Been back here for, well, no, I can't even say that anymore. I've been back for a while. I've been back since pre-pandemic. It's been nice. We've been slowly kind of traveling here and there, just, bobbing and weaving. Yeah, I'm really excited for, this next hour with all of you. And I'm gonna let my friends here introduce themselves.
Thank you, Shay. Yat Ash Siera Begaye Amaya Yanishia Tapahan Nishle Sinjakine Bashashin Bilagana Shache Sitna Janishanela Sehotso Denasha Shama Lena Adams Wilyash Jay Brandon Begaye. Hello, everybody. My name is Siera Begaye Amaya, and I am Dene or Navajo. Originally from Fort Defiance, Arizona. My mom is Lena Adams. My dad is Brandon Begaye, and I'm happy to be here with Shalene and also my husband, Tomas. We have a beautiful baby girl, and her name is Hosea. We're coming to you from Phoenix, Arizona, and the home of the Autumn relatives and the Yavapai and a few others. So happy to join you today, and kick it over to you, Tomas.
Thank you. Keshi kodonglaki de kinawe hot Tomas Karmelo Amaya leshana hom Tita Carmen Amaya leshana hom Tachu Tomas Amaya Senior leshana. My name is Tomas Karmelo Amaya, and I am Yoeme and Ashui on my mom's side. Her name is Carmen Amaya, and on my dad's side, I'm Raramuri, and his name is Tomas Amaya Sr. And as Siera said, we are married, and we're in the same household right now. We have a beautiful daughter together, and we work on a number of things together, including projects with NWI. And it's a blessing to be here with you today. And I was just thinking this is, tell me, how can you tell me you have a Dene person in your household without telling me? You have tape that says, Yat gorgeous. That's how you know. It's a giveaway. But I just want to say, really grateful to be here again with the Native Wellness Institute and our sister Shay. And let's kick this conversation off.
Yeah, dope. I see that we have people from San Diego and from the UK tuning in. What's up, everybody? One of the things that we really like to do is to kind of see where everybody is at. So maybe in the chat, you can say where you're tuning in from on a scale of 1 to 10. How are you feeling right now, right? A 1 being like, I wish I was back in bed, or a 10, we're ready to rock. I think myself, I'm in the 8 range, maybe, but on my way up because caffeine is my friend. What about you, Sib? Where you at on the scale?
I would say I'm probably at a 7. Our daughter threw the biggest fit right before we got on, but she's chill right now. So we'll see how the hour progresses, and if I have to jump off, I'm so sorry. But yeah, definitely looking forward to this conversation and getting my number back up a little bit so that I can have some good positive vibes to tackle my to-do list after this. So happy to have this conversation with y'all. And hello, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for taking the time to just check in with us at I20SP and NWI. And also, this is time to like check in with yourself as well. We're at the beginning of going into summertime, and so I feel like with every type of season change, it's always a good time to, you know, look over and evaluate where you are and just goals that you have, and whether they're short-term goals or long-term goals. And so we'll get into all of that in a little bit, and life in general. So, yeah.
What about you, Tomas? Where you at on the scale?
On the scale of 1 to 10, I feel like I'm at a 7 as well. There's lots to get done that we need to get done, and sometimes that weighs on me. But my wife, Siera, got me this awesome daily planner. I'm gonna show you a blank one because I don't want to show you one that I'm currently working on. There's not much to show, but this helps me a lot because I feel like I'm show and tell today. But it helps me a lot because I like the physical part of writing and then like crossing something out once I've finished it. I've tried doing it with using notes on my phone or on my computer, but this daily planner helps a lot. And so thank you, Siera, because it's keeping my mind somewhat focused on what I need to get done. But that's why I'm at a 7. There are times I feel overwhelmed, but then I try to center myself, and these power hours really help me.
Nice, same. Yeah, I think, there's a lot to planning. I myself have been trying to become a planner. My friend is getting married in July, and I just bought a plane ticket. This is the earliest I've ever planned for, I think, anything in my life. So I'm like, yeah, I can call myself a planner now. I don't think that's how it works, but I'm riding the wave. Anyways, cool. I see people in the chat, they're saying they're 10s, some are 6s and 7s. One of the things that I like about check-ins is, it's only up to us, right? Like how we respond or react to certain things that, affect our days or our mood, right? Our good friend Josh, one of the things we always talk about is like, when we check in and there's something that we need to do, right? Like, okay, I'm going to be on the power hour today. And if I started my morning and I'm like, all right, I wake up, I'm like a 4, not feeling this, don't want to do it, or whatever it may be. What do I need to do to get to that 7 or 8, right? To build myself up, or who do I need to contact if that's, where I'm at, or do I need to go for a walk, or whatever it may be, to give myself that boost, right? And that goes for anything in the day. It doesn't mean that every day we have to be a 10, or every day we got to be this, that, or the other. Some days we are a 2, and that's just what it is, right? And we'll get through the day, and then next day is a new day. And that's what today is going to be about. This next hour is just kind of checking in. How are we doing? What is life looking like? And whatever conversation, wherever it takes us. And if anybody has any questions or anything, please put them in the chat, and we'll address everything as much as we have the ability to. Cool. So I think one of the next things are kind of, questions or, conversation starters is, the world we live in it can be a stressful one, right? If you turn on the news, there's unfortunately multiple shootings we've seen largely in the news this week, and there's always something going on. And I think and we chatted about this just a little bit before, but I think one of the things that I've really been thinking about is like, it's really easy to be like, look at their community, or look at the devastating things that happens to them. But one of the things I've been thinking about is like, community as a whole and not necessarily separating it by ethnicity or gender or whatever it may be, but just looking at the state of the world and what is our role in community, right? And largely I think usually I'm like, okay, like the Native community, because that's what I know, right? But expanding that a little bit and kind of like to lead more with empathy and compassion, and because there's a lot going on, and so I think that was one of the questions that I had for both of you and for us to kind of chat about, is like, how do we move forward in a way that leads with empathy or leads with compassion in a place where we are constantly having things thrown at us, whether it's in the news or within our own homes, or whatever it may be in our lives. Like how do you guys handle, for whoever wants to answer?
I'll go ahead and jump in. Yeah, I think there's a constant influx of things that happen to us, that happen to our communities, that happen to our families, that happen to us personally. And those things can be positive or negative or somewhere in the middle. I've reminded myself to know that continuous flow is something I can make myself more aware of. So while there is a lot of hurt and really tragic events, I try to be present and realize the blessings that are also coming in at the same time. For a while, I did struggle with, like, how do I balance that out? How can I feel joy, or for example, last night, show up for my niece's graduation and be happy for her and hug her and see her, shine and glow, and still be aware of everything else that's going on. And I think it's something that we put into practice over time, and that helps me. I think when we put into practice the compassion and the empathy, there are people in our lives. We might be the one that people say, "Oh, you have such a big heart. You care so much." And at what point do we say, or start, if we're that person, do we feel like guilty for, it's not caring, but like what can you do, up to what extent, and how many people and how many things can you speak on? But our family, we stay aware, and we stay in conversation, and we between Siera and I, in this household, and what we can communicate to Hasea and have her around, we definitely don't want to have a bubble when it comes to what's happening to our brothers and sisters and non-gender conforming folks. Like, we look for ways to take it in, internalize, and think, okay, from that compassionate standpoint, from that trauma and healing informed standpoint, what can we contribute to that's going to lead or move us towards more healing? And that's easier said than done, but I feel like it's one of those things that we put into constant practice. And there are some days where I feel like we're a bit tapped out, because like Siera said, baby's having more tantrums now, or when a string of things happen, like right after the other. Hey, baby. Hi, Hasea. She's all, you trying to talk about me? What's up? So those are just a couple of things that we try to put into practice. But our love and our like our hearts and our I don't know, all our healing energy goes to our Black relatives, and especially with everything that's been happening as of late. How about you, Siera? How about you?
Thanks for sharing, Tomas. I feel like there's a lot of different ways that we've handled stress. And I've come to realize that we all handle stress differently. Our parents handle stress differently, and sometimes, we may take on just take on some of those characteristics. And so stress is actually something that I really struggle with and get overwhelmed by easily. And so right now, I'm actually in the process of figuring out like the best ways for me to handle stress, whether that's like with the community, with news, or with work. And so right now, I actually have deactivated all of my social media accounts. And because I realized that I really need to figure out what's going on with me and just to take a pause from that virtual world. And so I feel pretty good about it right now. I've had I still keep up with the news. I have a news app on my phone, and my husband is still connected, and so if like anything is happening with our community, he lets me know what's going on. And so yeah, there's one thing that has helped me, like he said, was using a planner. And I feel like I am a planner. I went through all of my different phases of planning. I'm also a producer, and so of the times that I have had the opportunity to produce, I've loved making timesheets and schedules. So I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with like this planner brand, but they're called like the Happy Planner. So I've gone through like Happy Planner stuff. I've gone through like iPad virtual planners. I've gone through a Google planners, and finally got to like this. Let me just show you guys really quick. This planner, Tomas had showed a little while, but it's just like what is this called? Like a
like a notepad.
Notepad. Yeah. It's a notepad planner. And it's called time blocking. The type of planning is called time blocking. And so it has like all of your hours of the day, and you just write in there what you're gonna do during that time. And so for me, like I'm a stay-at-home mom, and a lot of the times at the end of the day, I could feel like, oh, I like literally did nothing all day, or what did I do today? I can't remember. But like when I write everything down and plan everything out, I'm like, oh wow, I like did a lot. That's awesome. I don't remember like after a long day. So I feel like the time blocking like really helps me with stress. And I feel like when we write down like long to-do lists, it can seem very overwhelming sometimes. And so I think like the longer to-do list, let's like keep that to like a weekly basis, and then throughout the week you can like add in like 3 things you need to get done during that day to just not be like overwhelmed of so much to do. And yeah, I'm still in the process of figuring out my stress. I know that there are things that I can turn to, such as like my spirituality and working out. So I'm gonna be working on those things, and someday down the road, I'll check back in with you guys when I have social media again after I figure this stuff out with myself.
That's real. Yeah, I think like, I mean, both of you know me. For people who are watching, I don't know who's watching, so I don't know if you actually know me, but like when it comes to planning, I could be better. I'm very much so like the like squirrel kind of thing, like, you know, okay, I'm doing this, oh wait, what about this? And so I'll start like 10 things in a day and then maybe finish 1.5 if I'm lucky. Sib, man, Sib, I will tell you, on the she is the professional cat herder. Like, she's got it down. Tomas and I could be like, you know, we're over here, and Sib's like, okay, but we're gonna come over here, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So I need to pick up some tips on the planning, and I'm still working on it. You know, anyhow. Oh, what's that?
Shalene's the type that'll show up to the airport and she's in the cell phone lot and forgets why she's there, and she just starts beating for hours. Then it turns out she's supposed to go the next day.
Dang, okay, funny quick story. I went to go pick up these two at the airport. This is like, I don't know how long ago, fairly recent kind of. And I was at the airport and I was like, dang, like kind of chilling out, hanging out. I went to go get a drink and then I was like, oh man. And I was like, let me text them. I was like, yo, what time do you guys land? Like, what flight? And they were like, you know, this flight, this time, we come in tomorrow. And I was like, right, okay. I went all the way home, but it was just a test run. I was ready, you know, I was ready. Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things when it comes to like stress, especially like, you know, with the year that I've had, one of the things that like it has been a constant reminder for me is like, there's not a lot that I can control, and I'm okay with that. You know, there's very few things that I do have control over, and I try not to really feed into that too much because I don't want to become like, you know, obsessive or jump into unhealthy habits, you know. But one of the things that I've really been thinking about lately is like, you know, the things that I can control or the things that are in my power are like the way that I react or respond to things. But also having a lot of empathy for others has been like my big focus, because it's like, you know, when people want to say certain things, or we get into like that mob mentality of like, yo, this is the next thing, like we're gonna hop on it real hard, and you know, those who don't are this, that, and the other, you know. Like, one of the things that I really think about is like, we don't know what people are dealing with, you know, or what kind of state of mind they're in, or you know, why they're doing the things that they're doing. And so I've been really trying to just like step into that, like having empathy, like, you know, with the year, and I can only focus really on myself because it's the only thing that I know for a fact, right? Like, is the state of mind that I'm in. And, you know, having those conversations with those people that I love or the people that I'm close to about like, you know, there's always, like we said, there's stuff in the news, there's stuff on social media, there's stuff in our families, there's stuff that people don't know about. And we are all coming to a situation with all that stuff, right? And people don't know necessarily like what that stuff is or how it's making us feel or react, or sometimes like run away from, right? Like sometimes stuff is just too much. And you know, I think about, you know, when people do want to take that step back, like allow them that space. Who are we to say who can take a social media break, right? Like, if people are going to take a break, let them take a break, you know. Or if people want to express through whatever art form, like let them do that. I think like we are in this weird, and this is just from my own perspective, nobody has to agree with me, but we're in this weird place of like, we've lived behind a screen for however, what, 2.5 years, right? And that gives us a lot of liberty to feel like because we are in somebody's orbit, we have a say. And I don't think necessarily that's the truth. I think, right? Like everybody has their own life. Nobody wants to be told how to live or what they can and can't do, right? And so why do we feel like we can do that to others? I think, and a lot of people may not like that, and that's why I say, like, nobody has to agree with me. But I think, you know, one of the things, just for myself in terms of stress, because your girl has been stressed for I don't even know how long, but life has just been happening to us. And maybe you know, maybe you don't know, you know, we just came up on a year for, you know, my dad's passing, which means we're coming up on a year for my friend and my grandma and my uncle, and then we'll have my godfather, right? All of these things, right? And I think, like, I'm finally in a place, well, one, that I can be back on screen. That's one of the reasons I haven't been on Power Hours. I refused because I was just like, I can't. I'll probably just cry. But right, but like, what are the things that other people are going through? The empathy part is one of the things that I've been like, man, you know, like, how can we best come to this world with more love, you know, and even if that means for ourselves. And so I think, you know, my question to both of you, I guess, as well, and but I also want to publicly thank these two. On my screen, they're right next to each other, but like, you know, in this last year, you know, these guys have been like, you know, in my terms, my ride or dies, right? Like the two people who have been constantly checking in and like really giving focus to the like relationship that we have built together, and that foundation and that love. And I think, you know, when we are blessed enough in this world to have those people who will take care of you, who will carry you forward when you can't carry yourself, that's something I think that's like very powerful. And I think that speaks to, you know, the relationship that we have built and continue to build, and move forward with empathy and love. Because I think, you know, when we are dealing with stress or any kind of, you know, emotion, sometimes it is easy to kind of like shell up and be like, nah, I'm out for a while, you know. And then these two were like, okay, you can shell off the rest of the world, but you're not shelling us off. And, you know, they would reach out, and even when I really couldn't, you know, they would still be there. And that, I think, for me, when it comes to stress, it's not like, let me put this on others. It's like, how can I, you know, best still love this relationship with the people that are in my life, that continue to be in my life, you know. And so like with the check-ins, that's what I think about. And so I think one of the questions, you know, I have for both of you, or maybe we can kind of move this in a direction of like, you know, what are the things that, you know, other than planning, the things that bring you joy, right, in this life that we live. You know, what are the things that bring you joy on a daily basis, whether it's small or big, or, you know, eating cereal.
All right. There's always that pause of like, oh, is the other person going to speak? Well, I just want to say thank you, Shay, for expressing yourself right now. I love when we do these check-ins, and it literally, this could have happened or it was happening already before going live. Like, this is how we speak to each other. This is how we show up for each other. And your family and you have been there for us in the way that you've described. And so that's definitely something that's reciprocated, and something that's beautiful that comes from doing this work. And it brings me joy to do this work and to do it with individuals who care so much and know to put empathy in what they do. And so for us, it's been a blessing, and we've had our own, you know, struggles throughout this last couple of years, especially. And in those moments of need, whether it was a phone call or a text or a checking in, it really went a long way. And so we just want to say thank you, or at least I want to say thank you on behalf of our family. And I know you could probably add to that, Siera, but that's truly just a beautiful thing, and something that makes us feel good is waking up in the morning and knowing that we have relationships like this, friendships. And I just want to note here that when there's an organization like NWI and others that do wellness and healing work, sometimes there's an assumption that the individuals that are providing those services might have the support and readily available. But like Shay was saying right now, there's so many factors. And what if the rest of the team is going through a lot? And like how do we build that safety for ourselves in the moments where it might feel lonely? How do we feel that that support and that safety? And I think you were talking about it, and we can connect it to those things that bring us joy. Sometimes maybe someone's not answering a call or a text, and our mind could go with like, whoa, what's going on? Like maybe go that negative route, or are they ignoring me? But we don't know what's going on. So what are the other things in those moments that can kind of carry us to that next point, so where we can have a conversation with a relative, with a loved one? Because there are those moments. There are moments I might be like in the field or working. I travel for work, and it might be late, and Siera and baby might be asleep. I don't want to wake up my friends, and I'm going through like, some hard things. So what brings me joy? Sometimes I look at pictures of Hosea. I just start going through my phone, and I think of those times. I pray. I put to practice some of those tools that we learn over time. Music, that's where I want to go. Music makes me happy, brings me joy. And this is not an album review, but one of my favorite artists of all time, Kendrick Lamar, came out with a album called Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And I'm still listening to it. But one thing that I heard very clearly, and that I celebrate and I appreciate is the word healing, and just the process of healing, and kind of this very open conversation about it. And to see that from such a celebrated artist, and to have more people talking about it, I think is really important. And we can go on and talk about works of art in detail, right? And what they can provide for our community. But there was a song in there, forgive me if I'm not recalling the name, but they just go in they go in on so many aspects that develop an empathy for communities which we might make assumptions for. And so when I think of that, when I think of what you said, Shay, about the empathy aspect, it's major. And I've heard several people say this, like, we think, oh, that person's good, they're like, they got they got X education, or they got the tools, or they got the support, or they look happy. One, not all the information is public information. Not everybody puts their information on social media, and not everybody that seems to be outgoing or talkative or an extrovert is necessarily all right. And I know some of these things they could feel like they're obvious, but sometimes we need to pull back and stop and think, okay, from an empathy standpoint, and considering all that could be going on with that individual, what can I do right now, or what can I do to encourage my own community members to show up with empathy? And it was a bit long-winded, but if you'd like to add, contribute, or steer the conversation, Siera, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. What brings me joy is the question. I think my daughter brings me joy. I spend the majority of my day with her all day. And we've started in the transition of getting off of social media. I've kind of made like a mental note. I wrote it down as well of like different things that I want to work on. And so I had used the just like our wellness, our different wellness like words of different things that I want to work on. I'll show you guys really quick. So this is it says 2021, but 2022, I think just intentions as well. And so I had wrote down like spiritual, mental, physical, and I wrote intellectual as well, and like relationships, financial things, and like personal things. And so I have listed all of these different practices of how I could, what my intentions are of like improving that or working on that. And so for like spiritual, I wrote down like learning Navajo songs or smudging or listening to videos of elders. And so I want to be like really intentional with my joy and not like work on the things that I want to improve within myself. And I feel like one of the reasons that I got off of social media also is just because of all of the different distractions that are on there as well. So I was super into like, I had watched a lot of like, you know, drama things, so like makeup drama, or I can go down that rabbit hole of like, oh my gosh, what is happening? What's going on? Like looking at the comment section and seeing people's business that's out there. I'm like, why am I taking up all of this time and focusing on other people's business? And I need to like focus on myself. So that's another reason why I got off. I don't need to be focusing on other people's like businesses, or you know, if anything, everybody needs prayers. And so definitely praying for everybody. So one thing that's been bringing me a lot of joy is Hasea and I, for about 30 minutes to like however long she'll go. I've been turning on YouTube, and we've been watching different powwows. And so there's like fancy dance, and then there's jingle. And so every day we've been doing this of just like jumping around and trying to dance. I'm really, I need to work on my cardio. And so it's been a lot of fun of like thinking about my physical body, and like also bringing in like the spiritual aspect of dancing, and how moving our bodies, and listening to the drum and everybody singing, and then also feeling a little bit a part of like community, even though it's like in the past, but you're watching like a powwow video. And so like that joy of like seeing everybody smiling and happy, and seeing all the like little kids jumping around is super cute. So that's one thing that has been bringing me a lot of joy, is like practicing dancing. I'm still undecided if I want to fancy dance or if I want to jingle. I think I might end up fancy dancing, because I'm just like I'm all legs all over the place, all crazy. I'm not I try to do jingle and like stay like my feet doing its thing, but they're just like all over crazy, have a mind of its own. So I might just stick to fancy. Yeah, that's been something that has brought me joy. And yeah, this year is all about trying to build myself up. I feel like just with this like pandemic and different like social anxieties, and everything being like really uncertain a lot of the times. It feels good for me because I'm a planner. I like to plan. I like to do these little different things, and I don't necessarily want to say like it's a bad thing to like be not being, I don't want to be over controlling of laying everything out. Like I know that there are different concepts of time, and so although I love, like I've been talking about like planning and being very intentional, I can also just be like boom, out, chilling, nothing going on, free flowing. So it comes in waves, and I've been learning a lot also about like my womanhood and just like different hormonal changes like we as women go through like throughout the month that have to do with like our time. And so like being aware of when those hormones are changing and like being on my being on my so like our I feel like for us women, like our clock is different. Like we have to go over like a full like moon cycle. So like, okay, we're like our moon time, we know like what our emotions are going through. And then we have like our super motivated time where it's like right after our moon time. And then we go into like this other, yeah. So I've been like working on that as well. It's super interesting. And just something to think about because I feel like a lot of the time, like, and like going into what we as women are going through today, and just how a lot of the times like things are thrown like, oh, you're busy right now. I'm like, well, that's not greatness. It's like, I'm like, I'm gonna give my time next month or next week. So yeah, anyways, that went on to something else. My
No, I think it's good though. I think like there's so many, there's just so much to it, right? Like, and it all ties in together. I think, you know, one of the things that I hear from all of us, dang, I talk with my hands a lot. One of the things I think about is just kind of working on ourselves, right? Like, you know, there's always time and everybody always has something going on. And one of the things that, you know, we do have control over is, you know, our own lives. You know, I think like often we can get caught up, whether it's on social media or whatever it may be, like just in life in general, is like worried about people accepting us or worried about other people's energy or being good enough or, you know, whatever it may be. I think this last like 2 weeks I've been on like this, like, I don't know if I finally came out of like this hole that I've been living in or whatever it may be, but I was like, man, at the end of the day, not everyone is going to be happy for me, and that's all right. You know, that is, you know, not necessarily a reflection on me, but it is a good time to also reflect on like, what is that relationship? Like why, but not feed into it too much. Like I'm not trying to get obsessive about like, you know, am I going to be good enough for so and so, you know, but like, am I happy at the end of the day? Like, do I feel like, you know, I'm doing my best and giving good to the relationships that, you know, that I do have in my life. I think like, you know, social media is a crazy one, and like the stuff that happens, you know, can be so wild. And I think, you know, it can be used for good, you know, like I see Ray, he's watching right now. What's up, Ray? You know, it can connect us to people who we don't get to see very often. And we get to kind of see what they're up to, but also with the lens of like, they're showing what they want us to see. And so, you know, if that is your homie, maybe check in, do a little bit more than, you know, double tap a photo or whatever it may be. Like we we live in a world where we have the power to use the tools that we have in the way that we see fit. I don't know if that makes sense, but right, like we can use the tools that have been given to us for good or for other things, you know, like, and that's up to us. And whether that be social media or, you know, the conversations we have with people, or even about people, right? That's a big one. The conversations we have about people, like, are we feeding into this chaos or are we talking good about them? You know, I think there's just so much, right? And I think one of the things that has really been bringing me joy is, to answer my own question, one, my niece, she's 5 years old now, going on 35. This girl thinks that she's got it all figured out. Sometimes she does. And, you know, I've just been kind of following her lead and really like enjoying the moments, and just being really mindful. I think a lot of the time, like I said earlier, I can get like, you know, squirrel, and, you know, and I'll be all over the place, like, you know, well, what about this? What about this? And how do I solve this? And how am I going to take care of so-and-so and this, that, and the other? But at the end of the day, I tell this to people all the time, and it's time that I start listening to myself, is you can only give what you have, you know? And for a long time, I was using my reserves and those reserves, and I was crashing and burning. And then I was like, but there's still more. But now I'm at a place where I'm like, you know, it's time. It's time that I told this to my brother. For those of you who know my youngest brother, I was like, okay, we've also been doing some gardening, so that's probably where this idea came from. But I was like, all right, I need to start composting these ideas that I have in my head. And he was like, what he's like, composting? And I was like, yeah, like I have these ideas, or I have these, like, you know, this advice that I can give to people, but I tend to not use it for myself. So I need to, like, you know, compost it, put it back in and refigure it out so that, you know, growth can come from it for myself as well, right? You know, I think a lot of the time, especially in this kind of work, like people always need you, and, you know, there's always something to be, you know, to be worked on. And this past year for me, it's like, let me focus on the joys, whether they're little or big, or when things get taken from you, it doesn't mean it's the end all be all, right? Whether that be a person, or, and it doesn't mean that they like necessarily pass all the time, but like when relationships end, or jobs go away, or projects go away, or senses, you know, whatever it may be, right? Like it doesn't mean it's the end all be all. It's just a door for something new. And those have been bringing me joy, like really finding just the time in the moments, and not really stressing about others. And I mean that in the best way. I'm not saying like nobody's opinion matters or whatever, but like, you know, really focusing on the things that I love. I've been beading, although I'm getting kind of bored of beading, so I don't know what's next. Um, so we'll see. I'm a very like, I hop from, I'm a hobby hopper. You know, go from one thing to another. But anyways, yeah, I think, you know, there's so much that we don't have control over, and for me, that's a good thing. I think, like, you know, I'm just gonna just keep swimming, whatever it may be, you know, like just keep swimming. I think me and Sib watched that when I was down there. But yeah.
I was gonna hop in here and say that a few times I wanted to ask questions, either the same question back to you, but you were already answering it. And so thank you. I love your composting analogy, and I want to acknowledge how amazing it is to see like we've been talking to you throughout, you know, the highs and the lows, and to see you right now, and then, you know, I would say like kind of like carrying us through the conversation and just knowing where you're at right now, like realizing the healing that you've done, and your ability to jump on camera now, just seeing that is a beautiful thing, and brings joy, definitely. I think it shows us over time, when we have these principles that we share together, we hope for when that moment will come when you are ready, but we love you all the way through. We're not like, hey, hit me back up when you're doing good. It's like, nah, it's all the way through. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that. And you answered a bunch of questions, like by answering some of the prompts. I wanted to bring up a couple things that just came to mind, that recently brought me joy, because I felt like because of different situations, I don't know, I just wasn't doing it to how maybe I used to do it. And this could be related to a number of things, but I really find joy through uplifting my parents, like, and doing things that make them happy. And there was two things recently. One, I did a photo session with my mom. And when I was a little boy, I would go to the department stores and I would help her choose a dress. And I took her out to dinner recently, and I was like, Mom, I'm like, you look beautiful, like nice outfit. She's like, you know what this dress is, right? And I was like, kind of. And she's like, you don't remember? I was like, I kind of do. I'm like, I know we got it together. And she's like, this is the dress you bought me when you got your first full-time job. And I was like, man, it was cool, man. It was a good feeling. And then that day we went to dinner, and it was just me and her. We went to dinner, and we're outside of the restaurant, and I asked this random guy to take a photo or create a photo, a portrait of us. And he was standing a little bit far away, so I couldn't really hear him. And he said something like, a couple. And I'm like, oh, no, that's my mom. And he's like, no, I took a couple photos. So we were just laughing. My mom and we were laughing. Then we go into the restaurant, and she ordered like linguine, and I ordered a fish. I ordered char. And as we get our food, I share a little piece with my mom. I share some of the fish, and I put a piece on her plate, and she's like real slow about it, kind of like looking at it all sus, like, what? And I was like, Mom, is it all right? And she's like, I've never had shark before. And I was like, Mom, it's char, not not shark. So just like those moments of just like hanging out, and I could tell she was just glowing and happy, like for her to feel that, it just brought me such like immense joy, and just to laugh. And then there was like this display, and it had different like lobsters and crabs, and she did like a crab pose. And this is like, we like at that moment, we're not like, who's looking at us, who cares, we're just having a good time. And so, and then for my pops recently, we've gone through highs and lows as well. And we openly talk about, like, kind of man to man about our mental well-being. And I prefer him to just keep it 100 with me about how he's feeling. And I just knew, like, my sisters and I know that sometimes we just need to show up and do something for him, and for him to feel that support. And so we did a yard sale, and we sold some vintage items. And the first day didn't get that much stuff. And then the second day, a few more things sold, and he was like, he was just happy. Like, it changed his demeanor. He was like, he was feeling good. And I just appreciate those moments. And I know that because of life's circumstances, and even through, you know, our friendships and our family and our community, I'm reminded to, you know, really be present and aware and embrace those moments. And I know that, you know, our friends like you, like Shalene, like you're genuinely happy for us, you know, when we have those moments, or when we you're happy for us in our highs, and you care for us in our lows, and that means a lot. It means a lot to our family. So those are a couple instances that it really makes me feel good. And then the third quick thing is like doing things for the house. Like we had to resurface the backyard. It was all bumpy. So your compost analogy, somewhat loosely, it was just like, for the longest time, we kind of just knew that people could sprain their ankle, could get hurt. And then it was just like, we just need to do something about it. And just the act of doing something about it and being like physical and envisioning what it could look like for our daughter to play there, for us to gather and to have a movie night, that was really motivating. And so I know that when we do things for our household like that, it seems to kind of bring up the whole household. So to bring up our home. And so I will do the close to the ending here scale again. I was at a 7. I truly am feeling like at a 9, just hearing some of those things expressed from Shay and from Siera, these reminders. It sounds like there's a lot of love and forgiveness for others. There's a lot of empathy, and including ourselves, to like those pressures that we feel, to kind of loosen them up and maybe approach them from a different angle. And you said something real clutch, Shay, is like, we're not saying, I don't care what people think. It's a different energy. There's something about the Shay I used to know, like not used to know, but knew like maybe 5 years ago, the things you've gone through, we've gone through, things that happen in community and like drama and stuff. But like to hear that phrase, and it's just, it sounds different. It sounds more like I don't know, just like caring. It sounds like, I don't know, something that brings less stress. Sometimes some of the things that we do bring more stress in our, in trying to bring a solution. So I'll end there because we're at 3 minutes left.
Yeah, I have matured in 5 years. I've
That's
matured
the word.
last
That's
year.
the word.
My mom the other day, she was like, yeah, I'm maturing at my age and da da da. And then I was like, oh, that's a good word. And she's like, it doesn't mean that you're immature. It just means that you're always growing. You're always adding to, right? And it's up to us what we add to. Sib, you have any last? I know it feels weird to say. You have any last words? You have any last?
Closing remarks.
There you go.
Questions.
Got any closing remarks?
Yeah, we went over a lot of things, and I just want to say that it's okay to not be okay. There have been a number of years where I felt I wasn't okay, and also just like once it comes to being like productive, it's okay to take a break and take that rest, and not feel like a failure if you like didn't do something, or not that you didn't do something, but like just like taking off that pressure of yourself as well. I just want to definitely remind everybody that, because there's so much going on. There's a lot going on within our communities, and so having compassion for everybody else, especially like having compassion for yourself, and yeah, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not have a crazy to-do list. It's okay to take a week off of things. Yeah, what I wanted to say. Love you all. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us. We're the I-20SP, the Indigenous 20-somethings project. Our generation is, I feel like we're definitely, generations previous have gone through a lot, and our generation today is definitely coming. I feel like with social media involved, coming to a place where we're all coming to like a lot of understanding, common understanding of our communities and the work that needs to be done. And so I'm thankful for that. I'm proud of you all that are showing up for the community, proud of our I-20s. I'm proud of everybody for just, surviving and getting through it. And the most beautiful type of resilience is you all being happy and living life. So it's beautiful to see y'all happy and living life, and it's so resilient.
Awesome. Thank you, Sib. I agree. And thank you guys all for showing up today. I saw that we had a lot of friends show up, so that was really cool. But thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, at the end of the day, like, we choose what kind of day we're going to have. And if we need a restart, it might sound ridiculous, but go hop in your bed and roll to the other side and jump out and start over. Like, we have the ability to do that. Sometimes I do it and then I laugh at myself about how ridiculous I look, right? But we're all worthy of good things. Never forget it. And we'll see you guys next week.